You say feminism is toxic, masculinity is not celebrated enough.
Yes.
Explain that.
The toxic side of feminism is the one that tries to diminish the role of the man.
Like what?
Simply because you want to accentuate the role of the woman. People are coming out of a toxic relationship. You've just heard that, oh, you know what, that marriage has collapsed. The immediate reaction I get from people is that I'm sure it's the man's fault. No, you've got to hear their story. And until you hear from the man, don't jump into conclusions. There's almost like a gang up against the man.
So do you think that as a man, you have a right to speak on something like this? Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Dear Ife. Today, I have with me somebody that I know that he's ready. If we spend 3 hours in this place today, he will not stop talking. He's my brother. We grew up together, okay? He's the one that used to chase boys away from me in those days. All right? He's an investment banker. He was chartered at 14 or 16. At 16-year-old genius. He's also a pastor, and he has one of the smartest brains I've ever seen in my life. Welcome, Femi Oladehin.
Hi everyone. Absolute pleasure. Hi Ife.
I told you, excitement want to finish me today, because this conversation, as you all know that we've been doing before, just we bring people who can relate a little bit to the conversations that we're having. We share your stories, you bring your stories to us, we share it with people who have sense, and also, put it out to the community members and all of you viewers who are watching. Before I go into our story today, let me ask you a very important question. When I started Dang, what were your thoughts? Tell me what people were just saying.
Okay, so I recall Ife coming to meet me at home and telling me that she wanted to stop working and she wanted to stop her oil and gas business, and it just drove me nuts. I was like, no, you can't do it, Ife. No, you can't do it. No, you can't do it. And I recall saying to her that, okay, you know what? Do this
blog thing.
This blog thing.
It's a blog thing.
Do this blog thing for 6 months, and then let's talk after 6 months. And
I remember that.
Yes, and then let's talk after 6 months. And honestly, 6 months later, I don't even think we had that conversation because
we just moved on. We just moved on.
You have taken off. So yes, I was one of the people that said, "Are you crazy?" But yes, absolutely.
What do you think now?
Proud of what you've done with this. Absolutely proud. So whenever I'm talking to people and I say, "Oh, Ife, yes, she's my sister,"
yeah, I remember.
Yes.
Like, he's so pragmatic, and that's one of the reasons, and logical.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And logical. So when I would say something like, "Oh, I don't want to do all like gas together," so I wasn't shocked that was his reaction, but I'm very happy that we're where we are today. One of the things we always argue about is, you say feminism is toxic, masculinity is not celebrated enough.
Yes.
Explain that, because you already know that I don't understand that. If you want to celebrate masculinity, celebrate it now. Who is stopping you? Why is that a thing that we constantly argue about?
Okay, so this is it for me. I believe that human beings have evolved over time. Science says to us we've evolved from different species to who we are.
This gentleman is a nerd, so he's going to go with all of these examples.
But the reality is that when you look at the way our communities have evolved, over the last probably 6,000-7,000 years, human communities have evolved over a very slow pace. Most of the evolution we've seen in the last probably 200-300 years has been very quick, very fast, and been to a large extent somewhat destructive. So and we don't tend to focus on that. We focus on the positives rather than and kind of pack away the negatives and all
the challenges.
Yes, or the challenges. So we celebrate industrialization, but the impact of industrialization is that the family unit disintegrated because all of a sudden the man has to go out every day, all times, and all of that to work and bring in the bacon and all of that.
And what year was that? The man was going out all day, every day to work.
Well, it's
not 2020,
not
2024, when all of us are.
Well, everyone is, and again, I think it's part of the evolution. So when we talk about feminism, look, I say to people that I'm a feminist. I believe that the female child or the female should have exactly the same opportunities and should have the same investment as the male child should have.
Totally.
But I believe in gender roles. I'm strongly pro gender roles. I think that if you look at the animal kingdom, who are probably the closest in God's creation to humans, there are roles that are almost inherent in the way the animal kingdom play. And I think that those roles are also very important for us in our community, in our cultures now. And the toxic side of feminism for me is the one that tries to diminish the role of the man.
Like what?
Simply because you want to accentuate the role of the woman.
Like give me an example.
So marriage, for example. So I have a very Christian perspective towards marriage, that the man is the head of the home. The man is the provider, he's the protector, and the woman is the nurturer, the home builder. I feel that in a system where that is questioned, either because the man's character is not effeminate enough.
Effeminate.
Yes, that's the empathy part of the man.
Okay.
Yes.
And being empathetic has not to reject that.
It's so you maybe empathy is not the right phrase to use for it. It's the softer side.
Maybe
of things.
The nurturing side.
The nurturing side, the softer side of things. I believe that when you convolute that conversation, right? When you mix that conversation and you scatter it, it's what am I going to do with you? When you mix up that conversation, it starts to create a confusion in how people should make decisions. So I pastor now, and a lot of my perspectives have changed, not because the gospel means something new to me, but just because I can now put a human side. My interactions with people has impacted the way even I see life.
That does that.
Yes.
Yeah, when you talk to people, you don't it's not black and white anymore.
No.
There's always,
I mean, and I think for someone like me, I've never been a black and white person. I've always been a million shades of gray type of person, and you know that. Yeah. There's no, this is the way it's supposed to be done. Yeah. No, there are always alternatives. And where I worry is where there's almost like a gang up against the man. So that's where my conversation starts from. And I promise you, I can back up what I'm saying. I know some of your followers. Anytime I interact with your posts, I sense that gang up against the man. When people write their stories and people are responding, the question is always, "Oh, what did the man do?" Or we're sure it's the man, or this and all of that. And I'm like, that's not fair.
Okay, I just need us to be clear here. This community, Dan community, for those of you who are new, is a women-centric, centered community, okay? When a story comes on, the woman's side of the story is what we discuss first. I don't understand the part of the gang up. The gang up is not a thing. It's the fact that we discuss the woman's side first. If the man who wrote in the story wanted to discuss the man's side first, he wouldn't bring it to us. He brought it to us because he needed to understand the perspective or the actions of the woman for us to explain it. And so when that happens, it's not also fair to say, because there are many times uncountable that women have been, made accountable for their actions. So it's not a gang up. It's the fact that it's a women-centric and women-centered platform. And that's what you get.
So I hear you. And if you have to understand that the Dan community does not exist in a
Bubble.
bubble.
I understand that.
There is a world around that community. So when people have interactions with the Dan community, and every community, they're going to have filters. They're going to be filtration. There's a filtration system through which people form their views. So if I stumbled across the Dan community without the perspective of you having over time. So remember that when you started, you were not focused on the woman. When you started, it was just a platform for Ife to speak. Yes. Okay, sorry.
It's just not as loud.
Not as loud. Yes, maybe that's what I meant. But now, the moment one walks into it, you almost have this sense. You feel this sense of, oh, I'm walking into a female mob. And
so you're tiptoeing around.
Yes. So I mean, there's so many times when you recall that when I see posts, I wouldn't post on your platform. I'll call you.
Yeah.
Because I just realized that when somebody comes with a view, they're just going to come after me. And
saying that you're a man.
Yes, I'm a man. I'm a pastor, so which means that my perspective is always going to be viewed from a particular prison. And for me, what I'm saying is that look, the feminist movement is actually one of the best things that has happened to the world in the last 100 years. But as with everything human, when there's no moderation, there's always going to be abuse. I look at Elon Musk, for example, as a person, who is pro free speech. You can say anything, you can say anything. But trust me, Twitter is probably the worst place you want to be now because it's become so toxic.
Yeah.
It's become, people can say anything they like, they can, and we don't want to build a society where there's no respect for the other person's views, where the only views you want to hear are yours.
Yes.
I think that would not be a society that would be productive.
So in this case, feminism has no control, or who is supposed to put a control to it? Like, you can't really say, oh, because feminism is become so popular and people just use it as sound bites or just to look good, we shouldn't go ahead with that, or we should try and control it. How do you control? You can't control that kind of movement.
I think you can control anything in life. I mean, the truth is,
in this case, who?
It's about the narrative. It's about who are the biggest voices in any platform. So even in politics, we always say who are the loudest voices. They're the people who shape thinking. The feminism movement came from people actually shaping thinking around it and saying to men that, look, no one is competing with you. Women just want to have a voice. Remember this. Some of your viewers might be young, but there was something that happened in the early 80s. It was called the Beijing Conference. The Beijing Conference was a female conference, a women's conference that blew up the female emancipation and empowerment. And when it came to Nigeria, it actually did work. There's so many females who showed up as a result of the Beijing Conference and started to speak. So what I'm saying is that there always has to be, in every movement, there has to be voices who speak for that. Look, if we look at the NSAS protest, for example, one of the things I kept telling the guys is that no one negotiates with a mob. There's no negotiation. There has to be someone who's representing that mob and who's going to have the conversation. And I say that exactly the same thing with the feminist movement. That there has to be moral gatekeepers who are able to say, guys, no, that's not what we're about. We're not about saying that men are useless or men are scum. No. We're about freeing the woman from the clutches that society has put her into. And the stronger those voices are, then the more moderate voices become mainstream. I'm not saying to you that there would not be extreme views. There would always be extreme views, but
the lines will be clear.
Yes.
Okay. So do you think that as a man, you have a right to speak on something like this?
I believe so. I do.
Why?
Because I'm invested in the results of it. I've got two beautiful daughters who I want to grow up to be the best version of themselves that they can be. I've got sisters like you who I want to succeed to the wildest possibilities that they can. So of course I think that if we say that we as men, like as a man, if I care about myself, I must care about the person or the people who are in my life to enrich it. So the female enriches my life. So I can't say that it's not my conversation to be had. And guess what? The person who actually needs to yield space is me. Are people like me. So when you're talking about me, I can't be silent in the room. I have to yield space for you. I have to give you a chance that you were not getting before. So I must have a voice in the room, but I must be able to listen as well.
I ask you that because people will say, oh, it's men should stay back when we're talking about this thing. I don't think so.
No, I think we're on the same thing.
Yes, I believe that we are all in the room trying to create space for one another. So if you want to create somebody, you cannot create space by yourself if somebody is not willing to move. So all that conversation has to be all of us having a conversation and going forward. Where is the gang up here?
So I think the gang up for me, and so hold on. The gang up, I believe, is a response to trauma. So I'm not questioning it. I feel that women have gone through a very long-term traumatic experience of being told to keep quiet, being the weaker vessels and all of that.
So now we have to shout.
Now, yes, now that they're speaking out, there is a cacophony of voices that is driving the narrative and pushing it in a particular direction. The point for me is that, look, when I hear a story, I want to take a humanist approach to it. Not a feminist approach, not a masculine approach, a humanist approach to it. When you look at physical and emotional abuse, for example, the mental state we have is that it's a man who is the abuser.
That because that is the general
exactly
experience.
The same thing. But it's not true.
No, I agree with you, but I'm just saying that we need to find an example that gives credence to this issue of men being ganged up against these days because of the feminist movement. Yes,
also, well, I mean, a classic example is a toxic relationship. People are coming out of a toxic relationship. You've just heard that, oh, you know what, that marriage has collapsed. The immediate reaction I get from people is that I'm sure it's the man's fault. I'm sure it's the man's fault. I'm like, no, you've got to hear their story. And until you hear from the man, don't jump into conclusions. So because that happens a lot, where a woman comes, tells a story, and everyone, the guy's a bastard. And then I'm like, hold on a minute, I want to hear from the guy. I'm not going to throw any stones at either the woman or the man until I've heard both their story.
And then people get mad when you say, let's hear from the guy.
Yes, and then people get mad. So that's one of the things that just drives me crazy. I'm like seriously, let's hear from him.
Yeah. Like he doesn't have anything to say.
Yeah.
He did that. We know he did that. Yeah. I get that. That. Yeah. Okay, so looking at situations like this where it seems to have been like this is what it is now, even though I don't 100% agree, but we'll have to move with. Looking at situations like this, how do you think that men are dealing with this perceived gang up, especially at work and in relationships? How do you think they are reacting to this gang up?
Oh, I love this question, Ife. So I'll tell you what happens when a people feel victimized is generally what happens is they come together and they change course. So you see, what you're going to find in another generation is a number of men who are not committed to relationships because they feel that when that relationship doesn't work, society already says to them that it's their fault.
So
but you're seeing it today.
No. So for that reason, you say I'm not going to be committed because if it goes wrong, it's my fault.
Yes, human beings react to conditioning. So it's a conditioning. You've seen your father being blamed. You've suffered the same thing. Oh, trust me, when you have a kid, the kid is going to be programmed to respond to that trauma. So it's exactly what I said. It's every, a lot of things that people do in life. I've gotten to a point in my life now where I always asked the why, not what. Why did the guy do it? What happened? What's his story? Because until you understand people's stories, then you would understand why they're programmed. So let me give you an example. Your mom, on blessed memory, She had probably 1,000,000,001 reasons to walk away from that marriage, but she stayed. Guess what? When you come into a relationship, because you saw the way your mom stayed and committed to it, was she happy? Was she unhappy? You know, you can always have that conversation. You are going to have traumas that came out of that relationship.
Yes.
So when you are dealing with someone,
I'm not going to stay. I'm
yes.
not going to do that.
So you understand what I'm saying. So your response to that trauma is that I'm not going to stay. So what I'm saying to you is that when men continue to realize that in the current generation, what is going to happen is that when things fall apart, you are the one who's going to get mobbed. What will happen is you are teaching the next generation of people how to respond to that trauma. Now, I always say this: you can't beat me and tell me how to cry. How I respond is up to me. You can't legislate how I respond. So my fear is that the mob culture is just going to create a generation of men who are willing to commit, and when they commit for a specific reason. And what's that reason?
Transactional.
Yes, it's transactional. And that's why it's important that we find a balance.
Yeah.
That's why it's important we find a balance.
Haven't we been conditioned, all of us, to see that the breakdown of a marriage, even before our mother's time, is the fault of the man? I don't think it's about now. I think that even like then it's been a thing where the man, because the men are the ones who generally would cheat, see what I'm saying? Would cheat, would marry two wives, the woman would not marry two husbands normally. So I think these things, I'm not sure it has to do with now, this thing of men being blamed for the collapse of a marriage, or if there's a rape, if there's a rape accusation, the man is at fault. Like, I don't think it's now. I don't think it's a feminism.
It's
there.
No. It's not actually as prevalent as you think. Remember that, when we were growing up, when our parents had a misunderstanding and there was an external intervention, they focused on your mom, not your dad.
No, but they told the mom to nisuru. Nisuru means patient.
Yeah.
They told the woman to.
So that's what I'm saying. So, but the point here is.
See.
No.
So now your point of everybody fighting back is the same thing. You sit down and watch your mom being told, stay there, chop the beating, chop the abuse, chop the disrespect, and stay.
Yes.
And then the women today say, no, I'm not going to take that. Are we not saying the same story?
No. We're saying the same story. But what I'm saying to you is, how did each person respond to it? So wait, just hear me out. The response of the children of mothers who were traumatized like that was to say, I'm not going to take it. Right? The fallout of that is that we have a society where relationships are not, there's limited value to those relationships anymore. And so again, the problem with everything in economics, we say there's an equilibrium. But the problem is that you really never stay in an equilibrium state. There's always going to be an overcompensation.
Yes.
Yes.
Of course. You can't have that for like the straight line forever.
So there's always going to be
I agree. So are we not all overcompensating? And it has nothing to do with the feminism movement alone. Everybody is just overcompensating from their trauma and whatever they've been through.
Again, let me explain this. When in Yoruba culture, we say when a kid is caught in a tree, the adult is focused on where that tree is going to land, right? So the truth is, I always say that when you don't think about the consequences of an action, the tendency is you're going to overdo things. Now, and that's why it started with having the moral voice or the moral compass around every movement. Everything, human beings formed societies simply because they wanted a check and balance system.
Yes,
that's the reason. There was no other basis for it. And what we're saying here is that, look, don't overcompensate by then now creating a society of weak men who are afraid to take decisions, men who are afraid to take the jump, men who are afraid to lead.
That's the fault of feminism.
You know,
I'm asking you because I don't even get it. Like in some way, again, I would agree overcompensation on all angles based on trauma.
Yes.
But the fact that it's the reason, no, I don't believe.
No, well, so I'm not isolating the blame to feminism.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that one of the
fallout. Okay. One of the
fallouts of feminism, of toxic feminism. So I always choose my words carefully. Yes. Because toxic feminism is, you're going to create a society like the kind of society that we're afraid of today, and that we're starting to see on the fringes, where men just don't want to do anything, commit, yes, don't live, do anything.
Okay.
So just let's be winging it.
Ladies and gentlemen, on this one, we will all pitch in and agree to disagree, or even agree or disagree. I wanted to know something. Because let me just tell you guys, I knew him when he was a Lagos boy, before he became a pastor. What has changed? What's your perspective? And I'm not talking about your behavioral, what's called, no, like, there's been a shift definitely.
Oh wow,
exactly.
You know that,
exactly. So tell me what it was and what it is now. Your perspective to life and
my perspective to life prior to now was,
prior to being a pastor.
Yes, prior to being a pastor was that I was very driven by success. And there was no price that was too high to pay for that success. I had values that I believed, shaping the way I behaved. We couldn't even have had the kind of parents that we had.
I know, like as you grew up
without having those values.
Yeah.
But I realized that certain things were more important. Today I realized that my relationships with people is actually more important now than money. Yes. I value relationships now. I'm also less transactional in those relationships. What can you do for me? Is because you can't do anything for me. You're not in my space. I'm less transactional. But one thing that I would say that has been very transformative for me is empathy.
It's true. It's not easy to pity people. You think, no.
Yeah.
And can I just announce something? Let me tell you, Wondo men was very wicked.
Don't mind the fair.
But it's true. But it's true. You were very logic. Like it it's either logic or nothing.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember that.
I was always it was either logic or nothing.
Thank you, Jesus.
But now I give people a lot of slack. I cut people a lot of space because I would say, I wouldn't even say that is just on the basis of my faith alone. I think it's about getting older. Just understanding that human beings will always human, so my threshold for what I describe as betrayal, for example, is now very high.
So you give people more excuses.
Yeah, I make excuses for people, more reasons for you not to cut them off. And just try. I'll give you an interesting story that happened literally a few weeks ago. So there's this guy in church who joined the church last year, and dodgy character, but I was so invested in trying to shaping him out. And we brought him to come and live in church because we're still trying to decide whether it was worth us getting an accommodation for him, because I don't believe in helping people without a path for them sustaining the help. So I was like, you don't have a job, I'm not going to go and rent a flat for you. The next year we are the ones who have to pay the rent. Okay, stay here temporarily until you get a place. And then the guy stole the side mirrors for the church bus. And I was like, and then I was still trying to find a way, and then my pastors were like, no, he's got to go. So we let him go from church, gave him some money, tried to rehabilitate him. Literally the week before this incident happened, he calls me. I was in the UK. I had an accident, I fell off from a bike, blah, blah, blah. I need money to go to the hospital. I sent him money. And we've been
Why
having
do you already
some-
think that's a lie?
Oh wait, well, it was a lie.
Of course.
It was even worse than
Yeah.
that. So, and we've been having this security incidents in church, and I just kept wondering why would anyone want to come and do this in a church? Anyways, fast forward to a Monday morning, I get called by the security in church. The guy who I sent money to that last week
That had an accident.
that had an accident was caught stealing one of the ACs in church. So, now, what they call, there's Ife Kofoshi, right? And so there's Piflo Kofoshi as well. So Piflo Kofoshi immediately activated.
Yeah.
Got him locked up. He's in prison right now.
Yeah.
And I said to the guys, I will ensure that he goes to jail and he spends time. And we'll go and visit him when he's in prison. We'll send him money.
That's what we call
we'll feed him.
rehabilitation.
Yes, but don't do the time. And I mean, so the point is, as we get older, you come to realize that humans are going to humor. So does that mean I'm not going to do this for the next person who shows up? No, I will. Because that's the nature of Christ, right? That's just who you have to be.
Yeah.
But interesting.
I understand
story.
that. I understand that. And again, I personally know that is, how he is. Let's get to our story real quick. Before we do, we always do something. We always take a plunge. Hands up. I, Ifedayo,
Femi,
promise
to be honest,
to be kind, and to not ask who wrote in the story.
and to not ask who wrote in the story.
Thank you very much. Dear Ife, I'm a 36-year-old lady with 2 kids. My kids are of the same dad and we all live together even though we are not married. But he is my reason for writing. Is it still considered fornication that I'm living with and having sex with a guy I'm not properly married to, even though we already see ourselves as married couples? My reason for asking is this: I've been trying to build a genuine relationship with God, but I always find myself failing at it. When I spend time with God, I'll always feel this newfound peace, strength, and drive to get better within me. During times like these, I abstain from sex because deep down within me, I feel it is still a sin when we are not properly married, and it will jeopardize my relationship with God. But then I always flop, end up having sex, and feel guilty all over again. This has happened countless times over the years. I've tried talking to my man and explaining to him how this has been affecting me, especially when he complains that I always go on and off with prayers and every other thing I start, and that I'm not a serious person. But the conversations just won't work when I mention the problem. He is a very sexually active person. Lately, I've been considering the idea to leave the relationship with my kids and start life on my own, as I don't see my man taking any step towards making us official. But once I put a lot of things into consideration, it's just so confusing and I end up crying. I've prayed to God, asked for his mercy, direction, because frankly, I'm beginning to feel I've asked forgiveness too many times for the same sin, and God will not get tired, and God will get tired of forgiving me. I'm 26. I don't even have a single achievement I can boast of. What should I do? It's obvious I can't stay celibate, living under the same roof with a sexually active guy who is also not ready to be married to me officially. First question that I'm going to ask you, because it's actually been on my mind a lot, is can 2 people living together be officially married without going to church or the registry in the eyes of God?
So let's be very clear. The only marriage that is recognized by God is a marriage that has the consent of the parents.
Okay, so you're saying we don't have to go to church or registry as long as the parents say...
There is no requirement scripturally that says the government or the church have to be aware of your marriage. There's none, and I would wait for anyone to prove to me scripturally. The Bible says to us, when it talks about Isaac, for example, so we know the story of Isaac was that Isaac, when it was time for him to get married, his father said, I'm not going to leave this guy to marry just anyone. He sent someone to go and find a wife for him. They found Rebecca for him, and they brought Rebecca to him. The Bible says to us, I think it's Genesis either 21 or 22, that and Isaac went into his mother's tent and he married his wife. So you see, the scriptural requirement for marriage is actually parental consent. That's all. That's all. The concept of a church wedding was introduced by the Europeans. It's European culture. The concept of a court wedding was because society wanted to have a structure around that family. It was for property. Ife and Femi are married. What happens if anything happens to them? Society must have a benchmark against which they are able to choose what's going on and all of that. So there is no actual scriptural requirement that you have to go to a priest. Show me one person in the Bible who went to the priest to go and get a prayer for their wedding.
I will do my research.
Please go ahead. I can assure you that I've done it. There's none.
So once I take my bobo to my dad,
and your father says
okay,
yes.
and it's also the parents also say okay, like
yes.
So all of us have to be in agreement. That's
parental consent.
Yes.
Yes.
So go ahead.
That is it. You're married.
Okay. What do you think about cohabitation before this marriage?
So the problem with cohabitation before marriage is that you're going to put two people together who are obviously attracted to each other. You're going to put them in the same space without any form of supervision, and you're going to hope that they're not going to sleep with themselves.
Who is hoping?
So that is where the danger comes from. Now, you have to remember that so many of the practices that we have today, they're alien to us, and that's the truth. 21st century, the coming of the Europeans has abused and bastardized our relationships, and that's why things are now happening that we're not used to. So we can't respond to it because our parents have no experience with it. So let me give you an example. In Yoruba culture, which I know of, for example, if I saw you and I liked you and I wanted to marry you, we were allowed to date. We were allowed to see each other, but it was supervised. There will be somebody lurking around whilst you guys are whispering to yourselves and giggling and all of that, but there's somebody lurking around, but during that period, there are also investigations being done about the family
history. If you have madness, history,
barrenness, things like that. So yes, so all of that is done. Now, when it's now time for the couple to live together, there's also some room for discovery, and I think that's really the excitement that comes from that discovery.
The discovery of being newly married and still getting to know.
Yes, and getting to learn each other and all of that. But if you've already been married before you got married, there's no, there's nothing new to come with. So I don't believe that there's a scriptural basis for cohabitation. There's none, especially except you can cohabit without a sexual relationship, and that's then there. I mean,
what about the room for discovery you talked about?
Look, it's a beautiful experience discovering someone, knowing that, oh wow,
this is you.
This is you.
You mad, bro? I'm not saying.
So you mean you're actually fat?
Yes.
Something like that. Yes. There's that beauty of discovery, and I think that for those who have experienced it, they tell you how beautiful it is, but look, my understanding of God, and when I look at this person's story, and I'm sure there are specific questions you want me to answer, but the truth is that the churches has tried very hard to emphasize on the angry part of God and de-emphasize the loving Father part of God, which is the Father who allows you to find your way back to Him. The parable of the prodigal son is one that I absolutely love. The Bible says that when the man saw his son from far away, joy broke in his heart, and I was like, go and kill the fattest cows, you know, and let's have a party because my son has come back home. And it's important that the church is able to emphasize on that part as well, so that when people stray, they know that there is a pathway that leads them back to the Father. And that's very, very important.
This, you know, the Bible talks about not being unequally yoked, right? It sounds like this lady is already unequally yoked, especially in her belief. This is my belief in God. I don't want to do this anymore and see this official between us. And the guy is like, no, that's not my belief. We have to go.
So I think that their relationship is a very unique one. Yeah, and I would imagine not unusual anymore in our culture. In the sense that a 26-year-old lady already has 2 kids for a man out of wedlock. It's a very unique situation. But the question is, do you respond to an error with a greater error?
What's the greater error?
The greater error is you tell them to separate from each other. They already have 2 kids. Are you going to...
So having kids also doesn't seal a relationship as marriage. The parental positive consent is what we need.
Yes. I mean, scripturally,
yes.
You can't say, oh, we have kids together, so we're married. No. I mean, in the eye of the law, though, yeah, they're married.
Really?
If anything happens to that guy, in the eye of the law, I mean, common law.
I thought you said Lord.
No, law.
Oh, the eye of...
In the eye of the law.
Do we have common law in Nigeria?
There's common law in Nigeria.
Oh.
Yeah. In the eye of the law, common law says that, you've been living together.
Yeah,
you've been acting as man and wife. You know, and please, what is remaining? Oh, because you're not answering each other's names. No.
So she's a Christian. Should she act under common law or under the law?
I think what the minimum she needs to demand from the guy now is get my parents' consent. I mean, there's no one you should be having kids with who doesn't have the respect of asking your parents for your hand in marriage. I think that is, I mean, that's disrespectful to her parents.
That's the conundrum. Unequally yoked. The guy doesn't want to do anything official, and she doesn't want to.
So if there are times when the palliative doesn't work, where you have to cut the cancer. So the truth is that in a situation like this, where obviously she's carrying an emotional burden, she's carrying a spiritual burden, you know, and you know, it's obvious that the guy, there must be something wrong with the guy. And maybe, you know, I'm not making excuses for him, but maybe he's one of the victims of what I talked about earlier on, the fear of commitment. Yes.
But you have 2 kids.
But he has 2 kids.
Together.
Yes. So
much more
I think at this point, she needs to be speaking to his parents. That's if I was introduced to both of them, I would be insisting you need to be speaking to his parents, because he's disrespecting her parents by perpetuating that conundrum. You know, that's inertia that's already in the relationship, and not respecting them enough to, at the minimum, go and say, please, I want to marry your daughter. Here is a bottle of wine, or here is this.
Exactly.
You know, and I mean, come on. I think that, and you know, it's also even depends on which culture they are from, because she runs a very dangerous risk. If she's from specific cultures, there are implications for that marriage not happening. And he is also running a major dangerous risk. So in some cultures, if anything happens to her, by the grace of God, she will live a long and fruitful life. But if anything happens to her, when it's time to bury her, he's going to be in a lot of trouble culturally.
Why?
Also, because some cultures are going to say to him, if anything happens to her, we never give our daughter to you.
And so what?
Also, you're going to pay damages. You're going to restitute, because you deprived us of the joys of handing our daughter over to you. So now you've got to pay. So I know that the Igbos have that culture, the Calabars have that culture. I don't think it's prevalent in Yoruba land, but yeah. So you would have to marry that dead woman before they can bury her.
Wow.
Oh yes. So I mean, look, for someone that's had 2 kids with you, and it's obvious that they are having a healthy relationship, I think it's just an irresponsible man.
Not to go ahead and do what you have.
Just do what you have to.
So you mentioned that she should be speaking with the parents. What if this man does not listen to his parents? Because
It does not have Olubawi, Yoruba.
Yes,
That's what we call it. Olubawi means somebody who you can
speak to and he would listen.
and yes.
So if he does not have someone like that,
Yes.
how do you actually get her? How do you actually? What can she do?
Yes. So she can't talk to his
this
parents.
is,
He's
this
not
is the
listening
point.
to her.
This is the point where she has to put. So let's be careful. And I you know, again, part of why being a pastor, it leaves you very contemplative. I can't ask her to leave if there is no plan post leaving, because we live in a culture where once she leaves, she's considered damaged goods.
That's just terrible.
Unfortunately, but that's the truth. If she meets another person, a young single guy, and he goes to his parents and says, I want to marry this woman, she's had 2 kids before, then the traditional mentality of parents is, are there no single ladies? Why must you marry one that has 2 kids? So she's putting herself in a very difficult situation.
So should people
Go
put
forward.
themselves in? So should people stay back in situations that don't work for them because of
What society will
No, I'm not
say.
talking about society. I'm talking to you. I don't care what society says. I'm telling you that she's putting herself out of the market. So that's what I'm
by
saying.
staying with him.
No.
And having
If she
children.
leaves without trying to resolve that situation,
So if she tries now, that's that she has tried to resolve it. Somewhere.
she hasn't really tried. Trust me.
Okay.
What else? Based on what she wrote in what does
Based on what she's written, she's just having conversations with the guy. This is the conversation where your ultimatums need to be given.
Okay, so she gives an ultimatum.
Yes, look, something needs to happen. If it doesn't, I'm going to walk away.
Okay, let me ask. As a man that was used to be in town, God now call you back where? Olufemi Davido, come to me and your father. You know, he's been having sex with her for that long, had 2 children. What's the incentive to marry her?
Look, I mean, there is no incentive for him, and I'm going to be honest.
I mean,
about
at
that.
this point, yes.
There's no incentive for him.
Because it's
But he has something to lose.
What's it?
He has her and the kids to lose. If she's of value to him, he wouldn't want to lose her.
So this means, ladies and gentlemen, that it means you're not of value to a man who is not ready to do the right thing because he's going to lose you. So if he knows he will lose you and he still doesn't do the right thing, you're done. You're not valued.
Yes, but it's true now.
No, he's just forced to clarify.
Yes. If a guy if he can't do it, if there's nothing stopping him from doing it, and he has refused to do it, so basically he's bought the car. He hasn't paid for it.
But he's
driving it. He has damaged 2 tires.
yeah.
And
So damage to time.
he has damaged 2 tires. The poor lady has gone to the labor room twice.
Yeah.
You know, they've changed 2 tires. They're not follow come anymore. But he's like, oh, I don't like the car. Oh, I'm not willing to buy the car. No. The truth is, this is a man who's obviously, this is the man that gives men bad names. Because this is obviously a weak man that can't, if she's not good enough to be married to, then you leave. Walk your way.
Yes. It's
But
just
you're keeping her, you're preventing her from having the societal seal.
and the relationship
And
with God that
Yes,
she really wants
you're
to have.
now depriving her. But there's something I want to say to her though. So and I think we need to talk about that.
What's it?
God likes you the way you are. There's no God does not want any of his children to feel like a second-hand child. God's love does not diminish because you feel, or because there are certain things that you're doing that you know are contrary to God's will. God loves you irrespective of who you call.
So we can keep singing and singing and
The Bible says that, shall we now continue to sin and say
expect
that
the
grace
grace
will
of- yeah,
abound?
yeah.
No. So that's not, it's not grace is not a license to behave anyhow. But sin, you living in a life that is not up to the standards of God is not a call to destruction. So it's not like God is going to leave you to the devil just because you're not doing the things that he's asked you to do. Now, she knows that there is a pathway through which she can fix this problem, and she needs to fix it. And if the man who she's with is not helping her fix it, Jesus said, if your left eye is not helping you, remove it. But she must be ready for the consequences of the red eye being removed.
Talking about consequences, you're very vast in finances, financial education, and all of these things. If she decides that I'm going to be a single parent, what does somebody who doesn't have a certificate, because she mentioned that no certificate, no achievement so far, how does she begin to build herself financially to be able to take care of these kids and still, take her worth back?
Okay, so let me tell you something. One of the reasons why the guy is treating her this way is because he believes she doesn't have a choice. And that's why he came back to value.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And what she needs to do is, I always say to people that the best time to start doing something is yesterday. The next best time is today. She needs to immediately start looking at developing herself. Go and learn a trade, go and learn something that you can use to put food on your table. Because a man who is behaving like this is likely to cut you and your kids off when you walk away. She's going to say, well, she decided to leave herself. Absolutely. She should go and take care of herself. Absolutely. So she has to make sure that she starts to do that. Now, one of the things that a lot of people are not aware of is that, as much as I'm not a big fan of Lagos State, but the Lagos State government has a number of programs. She can go and learn a trade, and honestly, I'm going to be careful putting this out there. For someone like this, I'm pretty happy to see what options that we can have for her.
Yay! But we'll still put that resources from Lagos State. For other people who may need it.
Yes.
Yes.
But I think one thing to say is that so as a pastor, there's so many things she hasn't said in that story. You have to go back to the beginning. How did they even get together? How did these relationships start? They do matter. She's 26, she's young. When you have 2 kids at 26 and you're not married, there's a story behind it. And all of those things, when you're looking at interventions, that's why I said to you at the beginning that, that you must always hear the other side of the story. It's important. Or at least have further context to people's stories, because again, people have the tendency of telling the story that favors them.
Yes, from their own side, yes. I agree. Absolutely agree. On this note, I would like to ask you, imagine that you had a sister in this situation. What would you ask her to do from a place of a brother, not from a place of a pastor?
I think if she was my sister, I would be having a conversation with the guy. That's the truth. This is where the men in her life.
But should we be forcing somebody to marry another person?
It's not about forcing. Look, if their relationship is already a good relationship. If it wasn't a good relationship, she would have said so. It's not a toxic relationship. It's not an abusive relationship. This is probably just a guy who just doesn't understand why it's important, or feels that he cannot afford the ceremony.
At this time?
Yes. And that's where the men in her life need to step up. And again, that's why I know it's not gender roles, but it's true. When it comes to things like this, it's the men that step up. It's the guys that will go to the guy and say, bro,
what are you doing?
What are you doing? Our sisters had 2 kids with you. What's up? Come, at the minimum, come and see our parents. Or come and see us. So I'm hopeful that she has men in her life that are responsible men that can step up for her. So if she was my brother, that's exactly what I'll do. I'll step up for her. Sorry, it was my sister. I'll step up for her. And we're going to slap the guy around a bit. Just kidding.
Like you used to do in the olden days.
The Lord has touched us.
Thank you so much for coming. We've learned a lot today. I didn't even know. I didn't think about it. I know that it's there, but I didn't think about it. I had to, just seeing parents and getting their consent was enough to, say that this is an official marital relationship. This lady wrote in and said that she's not married to this guy. She's 26 years old. She's had 2 children for him so far, but she feels like having sex continuously with him makes her not right in the sight of God. She would rather that they get married and, make it official so that she can continue to do under the eye of my Lord Jesus. However, the person she's with, her partner, is not willing to do that. He's not willing to make their relationship official. So she's asking, should I go? Should I leave him? Or should I continue? But this feels like a sin. If I continue to do this, how will God forgive me knowing that I continue to sin this same sin and asking for forgiveness? Ladies and gentlemen, over to you. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to watch another interesting episode. Don't forget to drop your comments and click here to subscribe. Boom.